Welcome to the Economist Word Spotlight. What happens when the world's most unifying sporting event is torn apart by the very forces it was meant to transcend? I mean, imagine for a moment that billions of fans are tuning in, right?
Right, expecting this massive, joyous celebration.
Exactly, a celebration of global unity. But instead, you watch the stadium gates effectively locked by political rivalries, internal corruption, and, well, closed borders.
Yeah, the grand spectacle we've all grown up with, suddenly it just isn't about the game anymore.
It's entirely about geopolitical leverage. So today we are exploring a genuinely provocative article titled, "This May Just Be the Last World Cup."
It is a really striking premise. And, our goal for you today is to unpack exactly how the author constructs this argument. We're going to decode the rich, highly descriptive vocabulary used in this article to map out the potential collapse of global football.
And just to set the stage for you, the listener, the views expressed in this text regarding international politics, specific leaders, and foreign policy are purely the assessments of the article itself. We're not taking sides here.
Right, exactly. Our focus here is strictly on unpacking the language, the structural bricks and mortar, used to build these rather dramatic arguments.
Exactly. We're looking at how words shape reality. To understand the architecture of a collapse, we first have to understand the illusion of stability that came before it. So the author starts by painting a picture of an institution that is actively fighting against global fragmentation.
Yeah, and to understand that collapse, you really have to look at the first quote. The writer states, "The World Cup status as the biggest entertainment event on Earth has created what may be an illusion, that this is one of only a few cosmopolitan enterprises that can rise above the forces of parochialisation."
Okay, so let's unpack that specific word, parochialisation. It's a bit of a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, yeah. Parochialisation basically refers to the process of becoming narrow-minded or limiting your focus to local interests. It's about entirely lacking a global outlook.
So, like, retreating inward.
Exactly. In the context of this article, it points to a very specific modern geopolitical trend where organizations or whole societies just, retreat inward. Instead of thinking globally or embracing a shared international community, they're building walls.
Literal and metaphorical walls, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Both. They start focusing only on their own immediate tribal interests. The opposite of that would be cosmopolitanism.
Right, the idea of staying open to the world, which is what the World Cup historically claimed to represent, right?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. To visualize parochialisation, think about the global era of the 1990s and early 2000s. The prevailing assumption was that the world was flattening out into one giant interconnected community.
And parochialisation is the sharp reversal of that.
Totally. It's like everyone in a massive shared global arena suddenly deciding to abandon the grand stadium. They just take their ball and go play in their own isolated, fenced-off backyards.
Wow, so there is no more global stage at all. Which brings us to the core tension the author introduces. Because if everyone is actually just retreating to their own backyards, the idea of a global stadium becomes a complete mirage.
Right, it's just a front.
Exactly. The article states, but the cracks in that façade seem to be growing.
And façade is our next big word. A façade is a deceptive outward appearance. It's a superficial, false front that deliberately hides the true nature of something.
So the writer uses it to describe the illusion of unity and order within FIFA.
Precisely. The organization presents this highly polished, cohesive, corporate front to the world. But behind that gleaming exterior, the structural integrity is actually rotting away.
It makes me think of a massive Hollywood movie set, honestly.
That's a good way to look at it. How so?
Well, from the street, the building looks like a magnificent, impenetrable bank vault with marble columns. But if you walk around to the back, you see it's just cheap plywood held up by 2x4s and duct tape.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah, and a strong breeze, or in this case, external geopolitical pressure, will just knock it flat.
Exactly. The true nature of the structure is hidden until you look at it from the right angle.
But here's where it gets really interesting and where I have to push back a little on the author's premise for a second.
Oh. Push back how?
Well, the article actually mentions that historical tournaments were always vehicles for national political agendas. I mean, they cite Mussolini's World Cup in 1934 and the one hosted by the Argentine junta in 1978.
That's true, yeah.
So my question is, hasn't the cosmopolitan nature of the World Cup always just been a facade for underlying local agendas?
That is a brilliant observation, and it really highlights the nuance of the text. The author isn't necessarily saying the political manipulation of the tournament is a new phenomenon.
Right, because it's always been there.
Exactly. What is changing, according to the text, is the nature of those inventas. Historically, host nations used the event to project a unified, albeit sometimes propagandistic, image to the world.
Ah, so they were working together to keep the Hollywood set standing.
Yes, it was a functioning, mutually beneficial relationship between the political agenda and the sporting event. But now, as the façade splits entirely, we are moving from a cooperative illusion to active internal warfare.
And that split between public image and private reality doesn't just stay neatly contained in the boardroom. The author argues that this is where we see systemic breakdown taking over.
Right, which brings us to the mechanics of the organization itself. The text reads, America's bellicosity combined with FIFA's dysfunctionality spells trouble, reckon the Soccernomics podcasters.
Let's look at dysfunctionality first.
Dysfunctionality means the state of being unable to operate normally or effectively. It is a complete systemic breakdown.
So total chaos.
Basically, yeah. In this context, it represents FIFA's total inability to manage itself through standard, rational corporate governance. Instead of a smooth-running machine, you have internal chaos, conflicting interests, and structural paralysis.
It's like a soccer team where every player runs the wrong way and nobody knows the score.
That is exactly what it's like.
But I wonder, when an organization generates billions of dollars, is its chaos actually deliberate? Like, is dysfunctionality a feature rather than a bug?
That's a highly perceptive way to look at it. What do you mean by a feature?
Well, by being structurally opaque and disorganized, maybe they evade standard accountability.
Ah, right. If an organization is thoroughly dysfunctional, it's incredibly difficult to audit or regulate.
Exactly.
However, the author argues that this dysfunctionality has reached a tipping point where it no longer protects the organization. It actively threatens its survival.
Because it can't actually get anything done anymore.
Right. When the internal machinery is that broken, they can't rely on standard negotiations.
Which means they have to resort to brute force. The author writes, FIFA itself has long advanced its own political agenda, whether by strong-arming Japan and South Korea to co-host in 2002.
And strong-arm is a very deliberate verb choice there. To strong-arm means to use forceful, coercive, or bullying tactics to make someone do something against their will.
So it's not a negotiation at all.
Not even close. The writer is explicitly describing how FIFA pressures sovereign countries to bend to its agenda, completely disregarding their independent wishes. It's like FIFA is playing the playground bully, just twisting arms until everyone lines up.
To really understand this word in context, we have to look at the history of that 2002 tournament. Japan and South Korea had a deeply complex, historically fraught relationship.
Yeah, they didn't exactly set out to hold hands and share this massive cultural milestone.
No, neither nation wanted to co-host.
Exactly. But FIFA, looking at its own internal political calculus, essentially forced them into a shotgun marriage. They used their monopoly over the world's biggest sporting event to coerce two sovereign nations.
That's incredible. Strong-arming is an exercise of unilateral raw power to paper over internal problems.
And that bullying behavior isn't just directed downward at host nations, it's also directed sideways at rival organizations.
Right. The text notes that FIFA wants to capture revenue streams from the European governing body, UEFA. The quote is, "Last year's Club World Cup was all about FIFA trying to upstage UEFA's Champions League."
To upstage means to draw attention away from someone else by being more impressive, dramatic, or disruptive. You are intentionally stealing the spotlight.
Like an actor jumping in front of the lead.
Exactly like that. Contextually, the author is showing how FIFA is deliberately trying to make its own tournament seem more important than UEFA's established competition. Picture FIFA bursting onto the pitch in a sparkling suit, insisting everyone watch only them.
But this isn't just about ego, is it? It's a battle for market share. UEFA controls the Champions League, which essentially prints money.
Precisely. It's a zero-sum game for global attention and broadcast rights. If FIFA can upstage UEFA, they divert billions of dollars back into their own dysfunctional system.
So if we put it all together, FIFA sounds like an insecure lead actor in a play. They are internally broken with dysfunctionality, so they bully their co-stars by strong-arming them.
Yeah, and then they constantly try to steal the spotlight from rival theaters by upstaging them just to keep the audience from noticing the mess backstage.
Exactly. But the article doesn't just critique FIFA's internal mess. It looks at what happens when this internally broken organization collides with a highly volatile external world.
And this is where the language turns from corporate manipulation to militaristic threat. The author writes, America's highly controversial immigration policies, enforcement practices, and newly rediscovered bellicosity could put unbearable strain on the organization's alliances and voting blocs.
Now, again, we want to remind you listening that this characterization of American foreign policy is the specific geopolitical assessment of the article's author. We are just analyzing how the word functions to build their argument.
Yes, strictly analyzing the vocabulary here. So, bellicosity. It means an aggressive, warlike attitude, or a distinct tendency to start quarrels.
That's a very heavy word to use for a host nation.
It is. In this context, it points to a combative and confrontational international stance. It equates the nation to a hot-tempered soccer hooligan ready to pick a fight at the slightest provocation.
So they aren't just saying a host nation is being uncooperative. They are highlighting a logistical nightmare. If a host nation's foreign policy is combative, what happens when fans or teams from out-of-favor nations try to get visas?
That is exactly the strain the author is pointing to. The World Cup relies on seamless international mobility. If a host nation exhibits bellicosity, like instituting travel bans or heightening border friction, the tournament's infrastructure fractures.
Because the voting blocs within FIFA, which represent different global regions, will inevitably revolt if their citizens are targeted.
Right. The external politics overwhelm the internal governance.
And when you introduce that level of unpredictable aggression into an already fragile system, it creates immense shockwaves, which leads to the reaction of the regional football bodies.
Yeah, the text reads, the African Football Federation, CAF, is reeling after its farcical decision to strip Senegal of the African Cup of Nations.
Reeling, that paints a very vivid physical picture.
It really does. Reeling means being in a state of profound shock, confusion, or disarray, typically immediately following a sudden heavy blow. Here, it shows the African Federation completely destabilized by controversy.
It's not just a bad PR day for them. It sounds like a structural concussion.
That's a great way to phrase it. It's like getting hit on the head by a soccer ball. Your mind is spinning, and you forget where the goal even is. A system that is reeling is entirely off balance.
So they can't make strategic long-term decisions anymore. They're just in survival mode.
Exactly. Reacting blindly to the last crisis.
Let me ask you this, then. If the host nations are showing bellicosity, and the regional federations are reeling, doesn't the vocabulary itself suggest the World Cup has transformed from a sporting event into a weaponized geopolitical battleground?
Absolutely. The author has deliberately stripped away the lexicon of sport. We aren't reading words about competition, teamwork, or athletic victory anymore.
We're reading the vocabulary of conflict and trauma.
Exactly. The sporting event is framed as a casualty of geopolitical warfare, which brings us to the culmination of the article's argument.
Right, when you combine that cracking facade, the internal bullying, and this external aggression, the structural integrity of the entire enterprise finally gives way.
Yes, and the author questions the future of the upcoming tournament, asking, or will it be the one that sends the tournament into a tailspin from which it cannot recover?
Tailspin? That's borrowed from aviation, right?
It is. It describes a rapid, uncontrolled descent, and it's used metaphorically for situations that are spiraling completely out of control. Contextually, it represents the World Cup entering a state of sheer, unmanageable chaos.
It's like the tournament is spinning wildly out of control like a top, and one wrong step, and it plummets.
Yeah.
In aviation, a tailspin happens when an aircraft experiences an aerodynamic stall. The pilot pulls the yoke, but the plane simply doesn't respond anymore.
Right, gravity takes over, and that is the exact mechanism the author is invoking. Once this institutional tailspin begins, FIFA loses all ability to course correct.
Because their usual levers of power, like throwing money at a problem, just stop working.
Exactly. The external political forces are too massive and chaotic, and if they can't course correct, the damage becomes permanent. The author creates a hypothetical scenario involving detained fans and boycotts, concluding, if it did, then the underlying strains within the FIFA family could turn into something irremediable.
Irremediable. That sounds incredibly final.
It is the linguistic point of no return. It means impossible to remedy, correct, or repair. It signifies a state of fundamental structural rot that is entirely beyond hope of recovery.
Wow. So it highlights the author's belief that FIFA's problems might become so severe they can never be fixed.
Yeah, it's like a torn soccer net. No matter how you patch it, the ball just slips right through.
It implies a kind of structural fatigue. You can't just slap a fresh coat of corporate paint on rusted rebar.
Exactly. If a system is remediable, you can reform it. But an irremediable system has fundamentally failed at its core.
And when an organization reaches that state of fundamental failure, but still desperately tries to maintain its original facade, the public perception shifts drastically, doesn't it?
It really does. And that brings us to the author's final fatalistic assessment. Because FIFA has become a farce, and the curtain must fall eventually.
A farce. That is a devastating word to end on.
It means a ridiculous, absurd, or laughably inept situation. It is used specifically to criticize something as being a complete sham. In this context, the author is stating that FIFA's operations are so absurd they aren't taken seriously anymore.
It's the total loss of institutional gravity.
Yes. Envision FIFA's boardroom as a slapstick comedy show where serious global business turns into a running joke. The moment the global public collectively stops believing in the authority of the governing body, the tragedy just becomes a comedy.
But I have to ask, looking at this through a broader philosophical lens, if a system is truly irremediable, is becoming a farce and going into a tailspin actually a necessary evil? Like, is a complete collapse the only way to clear the pitch and build a healthier global sporting enterprise from scratch?
That is perhaps the most important question raised by the text. Institutions have faced near-death experiences before.
Right, like the Olympics.
Exactly. The Olympic Games nearly collapsed under the weight of global conflict after the Second World War, and successive boycotts in the 70s and 80s almost destroyed the movement entirely.
So sometimes a system has to hit rock bottom to shed its dysfunctionality.
Precisely. The writer suggests that because nothing grows forever, institutional decline is inevitable. The farce might not just be the end. It might be the necessary final act that burns the old structure down.
Making way for a new, perhaps more honest era of international sport. Let's look back at the linguistic journey we just took. We started with the illusion of a cosmopolitan enterprise, right? An institution supposedly fighting against the parochialisation of the globe.
But that was just a facade hiding a fragile Hollywood set.
Exactly. Underneath, we found deep systemic dysfunctionality, an organization strong-arming sovereign nations and desperately trying to upstage rival corporate entities. When that internal mess collides with the external bellicosity of host nations, regional federations are left reeling.
And ultimately, the author argues, all of this threatens to send the tournament into an irremediable tailspin, revealing the entire enterprise as nothing more than a farce.
By systematically tracking these specific words, you can see exactly how the author engineers the collapse of the World Cup in the mind of the reader. We want to thank you for joining us on this exploration today. It is always fascinating to see how descriptive words actually reveal the hidden mechanisms of global events.
And we'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. We've examined how language frames the potential death of the World Cup. But ask yourself, if these massive global entertainment mega events fragment and fail in an era of ethno-nationalism, what will replace them? What will become the new shared touchstones of human culture? Or are we destined to just play in our own isolated backyards forever?